That 90s Show is, of course, the brand new sitcom series on Netflix that is the sequel series to That 70s Show, a show I grew up watching and loved so much. This show it started in the late 90s and went on to the early 2000s. It went for like 6 or 7 seasons, somewhere around that. So I didn't start watching until years later when I grew up and actually, could talk and stuff because I wasn't born until the 2000s. But I've just always loved the show, watching reruns, watching it with my family. And as with all sitcoms, I mean, you see the effect that Friends has had on society and everything. Sure, it was big in the 90s when it was on, but now it's arguably just as big now. People watching reruns of it on Netflix, when it was on Netflix, and now that it's on HBO Max. And it's a very similar thing with That 70s Show. Like most sitcoms, they kind of come back and have a resurgence for a whole new generation, and that's exactly what That 70s Show was for me. It's a group. I just love this show. So when I heard they were making That 90s Show, a sequel series, which also led me to find out they apparently made a That 80s Show, which apparently didn't work out very well. But now they're doing That 90s Show, and it's actually a sequel, brings back all the classic characters, with Red and Kitty being kind of at the forefront here and bringing it to the stage. We now have Leia Foreman, the daughter of Eric and Donna, which, I mean, first of all, right there, the fact that they named her Leia is awesome because, I mean, Eric, huge Star Wars nerd, so I love that. And, the big attraction with this show is that it brings back the characters from That 70s Show. You get cameos, at least cameos from all of them. Some of them have much bigger roles, like Donna has a pretty big role, is in multiple episodes here. Eric has a pretty significant role in that first episode. And then you do have characters like Kelso and Jackie, who just have a one quick scene cameo, and Fez is in a couple episodes here as well. Stephen Hyde, of course, doesn't show up at all and isn't mentioned at all because, Danny Masterson, the whole sexual assault rape thing real life, so that's kind of why he's not here. But then even Leo and Bob, of course, man, there's some great references and cameos in the show. And while it does heavily lean on That 70s Show, bringing back these characters and, the references to that series, and there are a lot of tropes that are redone from the first couple seasons of that show here in this first season of That 90s Show, I do still feel like it kind of stands on its own. Now, obviously, if you're a fan of That 70s Show, if you've watched the show, it's going to be a much better, more enriching experience for you. But I think even for fans that haven't seen the show before, who just go into this just watching That 90s Show, I think they'll still appreciate it again, just probably not on the level that you will if you were previously a fan of That 70s Show. And also, it's kind of weird for me, not growing up in the 90s, not getting a lot of the 90s references. But then again, that was the same thing with the 70s. So I didn't really find that being too big of a deal. And even though it does rely heavily on that 70s show nostalgia and those characters, still, these new characters are the forefront of this show. They put the spotlight on these characters again, Leia Foreman being the star here, and you can kind of see how most of these characters kind of reflect the types of roles that each character from the original show represented in that one. So you can kind of see the similarities there. And I was kind of worried about that going into this, like, with a lot of reboots and continuations of shows that we've been seeing a lot lately, where they bring back the original characters, but they're in smaller roles and introduce a new generation of characters for the franchise. Usually you end up not really caring about those new characters, but in this one I actually do. This show really recaptures the feeling of That 70s Show, the kind of campiness with the jokes and the style of comedy, which is a bit cheesy at times, but I really enjoy it in this setting. And it just feels really refreshing compared to a lot of modern day specifically sitcoms, but really just series in general. So I really enjoyed that. And these characters, you actually care about them. Like, I actually grow to care about these characters. Leia, I really enjoyed her character. I really enjoyed all of these characters. I think Ozzy was really a big standout for me as well. Of course, it's got the classic teen drama with romance and everything. We have Jay Kelso, which was definitely an interesting addition. Obviously, big reference to Kelso in the original series. I did think that was kind of weird though, how in this version apparently Jackie and Kelso are now married and have a kid together, which, I mean, that when that 70s show ended, Jackie was with Fez. And Mila Kunis even talks about that in an interview about how that was kind of weird, about like, hey, I should have ended up with Fez. And they do explain why it happened in the show, but I feel like probably would have been better if they just stayed together. I mean, I get it because Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are married in real life, but she even said that, like, it was weird acting with my husband. So that was kind of weird for me. But other than that, like, I mean, I really enjoyed Jay as a character as well, and his relationship with Nate, and his relationship specifically with Leia as well. I really enjoyed their love story. That's kind of one of the big focuses for this season. And now getting kind of more into like spoilerish stuff, if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend checking out the show. Kind of the big ending here that's really left in an awkward place, because the whole thing with the show is that Leia just comes to visit with her grandparents and spend the summer with her grandparents, and that's when she hangs out with all these friends and meets these new people. That's kind of the thing with the show, which is, it kind of puts it in a weird spot, because every season, if this gets multiple seasons, will have to take place during summer, which I feel like is going to be kind of weird, because that leaves yourself very limited. But so far, I mean, the way it's set up, I feel like it could work out fairly well. But the way we end this off, of course, Leia has to go back to Chicago with her parents, Eric and Donna. And so she has to leave all these friends behind. But of course, that leads to her and Jay having to break up, and her being super upset about that. But then of course they mend the relationships and all that stuff, and in the end Jay is super confident about that, but then she ends up bonding with Nate about the whole kind of not knowing where you're supposed to be, not knowing who you are type thing. And I was kind of getting those vibes in episode 9, but then in episode 10, when they almost kiss, and then the fact that Gwen catches them, that was a great moment right there. And of course, again, it's the teen drama, really gets you going. So it's left at an interesting spot going into a possible second season, because she leaves with so many unanswered questions and so many things left unsaid here, where Jay is very confident in this relationship. He's like, yeah, no, I want to make this work. Long distance relationships, they're tough, but I think we should at least give it a try. Meanwhile, Leia and Nate have that moment, and you're not sure where that's going to go. I do still feel like it's going to be, Leia and Jay are going to end up together. I mean, I just feel like that's kind of got to be the obvious thing, because they're the Eric and Donna of this show. But again, it's really playing up tropes from the original series. Nate is kind of the Kelso of this show. And I mean, Kelso was, hidden on and making out with everybody, so it makes sense that his character would be in that spot. But you kind of saw it with his relationship with Nikki. Obviously, they're the couple throughout the season, but you kind of see how, like, she's, like, obsessed with school and getting into college and all that stuff, and he's not really sure where he's at in life. So it made sense from that standpoint. I actually really enjoyed that. But it just leaves the show in a really weird, awkward spot. I mean, in a good spot, because it gets me really excited for a potential season 2, and what gets me really hopeful that we will get a second season, because I think for the most part it's getting fairly good reviews, especially from fans of the original series. If you've watched that 70s show, you're definitely gonna enjoy that 90s show, because it's a very similar vibe. So I really enjoyed this. I really loved it. Especially compared to how, like, that 70s show, their seasons were like 20 plus episodes, like how cable shows used to be. And now you get that 90s show with just a 10 episode season, which did kind of suck, because it was kind of like a 5-hour binge and then boom, it's over. But at the same time, again, gets me excited. I really do hope we get a second season at some point in the future. Netflix has kind of been like canceling a bunch of shows lately, so who knows what's going to end up happening here, but I'm pretty confident it'll happen, and I really am hopeful that it will happen. So guys, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you watch that 90s show? Were you a fan of it? Were you a fan of that 70s show prior to this? And do you hope we get a second season of this series on Netflix? So thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the movie life.